There are rules about copywriting. So there's one about having to get permission for all the agreements that you do. When you go on locations, you have to have a contract that says, you know, what the location's responsible for and will provide and what we will do. So many meetings, you know, but you do them because that's what when you work for a company. So there are all those meetings. And then there's the creative meetings, okay? There are many, many meetings where the director meets with the writer. And I sit in on all those meetings because I want to know what's going on, okay? And they talk about, oh my gosh, we talk about, you know, the prop master will have a meeting about what they're eating and what will look like and how much. There's a meeting about the extras, the atmosphere, the people that come in and fill an audience or fill a restaurant or fill a classroom full of people, because how old are they? You know, what is the ethnic diversity of this group of people? How many people do you need? What are they going to wear? You know, are they in a fancy restaurant that you have to hire them coming in suits and nice gowns? Or do you want them to wear jeans? Do you want them to change their clothes partway? So you want them to bring outfits with them? All these things have to be talked about ahead of time, okay? So what we do is we have a meeting called a concept meeting fairly early, like a couple weeks before we're going to shoot. And it's like a pre-production meeting where all the department heads are there, the costume designer, the DP, the prop master, and we sit and we actually go through the script with the director, page by page. And we stop and everybody asks the questions that they need to know so that everybody knows what they need to work on, what they have to go and buy, what they have to go and build, all right? And that's a very key meeting. And the writer is very important there because it's the writer's imagination that we have to service. So we need to ask the writer these questions, you know, does the actor wear a wig? What is their hair gonna look like, you know? And if that actor's hair can't do that with the hair, then I have to have a wig made to make it look right for this actor to have a wig. All this stuff has to be talked about. This is a lot of little things. So that's the concept meeting, going through it. Then there's the budget, okay? And that's my job. What happens is when I get a show, the studio will basically have an idea. It's called a template for a budget. Well, they will have an example of a show similar to the one we're going to do, where they have a budget with the amount for each department in it and what we call it the target number, how much they want to spend on this show, okay? The pilot that I did this year cost $4 million. They spent a lot of money. And the series that I did last year was like $2.5 million every episode. So, you know, if you take like $2.5 million per episode times 22 episodes, I'm responsible for $55 million. That's my job, okay? That's a lot of money. But they also want to make sure that they don't want to spend too much money. So my job is to talk to every single department and say, how much money do you need to do your job? Now this is back to like being the contractor on the job where I had to hire the plumber and I had to hire the electrician. It's the same thing. It's like, how much money will it cost you and how much time will it take you to do this job, okay? And I don't do all those jobs, but I've been doing this long enough that I know how much it should be, okay? So I'm not an accountant, but I have a very good idea of how many days it will take. It's called how many man days, how many employees they will need to do the job, how much money they will need to buy the costumes. I just know, you know, it's just one of these experience things. So, but I have to then get approval from the studio. So I have to constantly, and the unit production manager helps me do this, okay, because they're very good at estimating these things. And, you know, this special effects. We did an episode this past year where there was a flood in a bathroom, okay, where the person who's cleaning the bathroom goes in and sees a bit of bubble gum underneath a sink and pulls it off, and all of a sudden water starts coming out. And then he goes to fix it and he opens the thing where the water control is and it starts coming out with water. And over the whole 20 minutes of the episode, the room fills up with water, okay? So how do you do that? You can't do it in your regular set because you will ruin your set, so you have to build one. So we work together with the special effects and the construction crew and the production designer, and we built a bathroom, and we built it with a waterproof pan, almost like a shower, okay? That you had to step over it to get into it. We had to buy boots for the grips and electrics, so when they went in, they didn't get their clothes wet. There was a point to this. I've lost my track here. Just an example of what we have to prep for, okay? So we had to plan ahead and build that set. And by the way, when we shot that episode, it looked great, and it was very funny, and it was very convincing. Oh, and then the water comes out from overhead, the safety sprinkler, the fire sprinkler goes on, so then you have water coming down from this top as well. But what went wrong here that it was just stupid, it was so stupid that one of the dolly grips, when you mount the camera on the dolly, and then we'd had a dolly in there because they wanted to do a push in to something, and they called lunch, okay? And people went away to lunch, and during lunch they were going to fill it to the next level, and they left the dolly inside the pan, okay? And it's like, how could you do that? It was just not very smart. And what happened was it could have cost $20,000, maybe more, because these dollies are very expensive, and there are very few people who make them, so you can't just have anybody make you one or buy one from them. It turned out that there was insurance, that Universal Television had insurance for these very special things like dollies. But it still cost us $5,000 that we were not planning to spend to replace this dolly, to pay the company to fix it. And that was still just with insurance. So things happen, right? But that was part of the pre-production, is like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to fill a bathroom with water? And we did it.
Barbara?
Yes.
Do you ever have VFX supervisors on set?
We do hire a VFX supervisor, but mostly when we need one, okay? A lot of the comedies, not every episode has visual effects, but we will have somebody who we call when we need them. We need visual effects. We did several shows that took place in an auditorium. So say we were in this room, and I was part of the show, and you were shooting me giving a presentation, but we wanted to cut to the audience. But what if this audience is like 10 times as big? It's a big auditorium. It would cost a lot of money to hire that many extras to fill all the seats. So that's when we would have the visual effects person come with us when we scout the show, because they'll do something called tiling, where we will shoot this section here, and then we'll have all of you move over here and shoot it here, and then we'll have you move back there and shoot it in there, and then in the visual effects, in the visual effects, then they'll put it all together so that it's a more efficient way to shoot it than hire. Because if you have to hire 200 or 300 people, is not just paying them. You have to feed them at lunch. You have to make sure there are enough costume people to make sure that they look good, enough makeup and hair people to make sure that they look okay. You have to have a place for them to sit. You have to move them from the parking lot to the location. So it's better sometimes to use the visual effects. And sometimes you just need visual effects when you're editing a show to clean up mistakes that happen. Say, what if you're using a boom to record the sound, and the boom dips into the picture? You have to then, but you really like that performance, and you say, I have to use that. So then the visual effects would have to erase that boom there. So there's a lot of things. So good question. So in my shows, we do have a visual effects supervisor, but we only call them when we need them. They're not carried from week to week. Okay. Sometimes you need to do storyboards, all right? We did a show this year that had to do with a high school. Like the high school they have a big rivalry with another high school, and they were it was very stupid, but it was very silly, where they had the principals from each of the high schools ride a bucking bronco. Do you know in the Western bars they have the mechanical bulls that you can get on? Do you know that? Yeah, and it's been in movies, and so, I think you have to drink a lot to want to get on one of those. But you get on, and the idea is that you go around, and then you get thrown off. So they decide that they're going to have the principals ride them. But they have to build the mechanical bulls. It's not just they went and rented them. So we had to design them with car parts, and we had to find, though, the original mechanism for the bucking bronco to do. So we found somebody in LA who had the bucking broncos and would allow us to build some crazy, with fenders of cars and parts of television to build these crazy bucking broncos. But at one point they said, we're not going to let you use our mechanism unless you can tell us that if anything bad happens to the actors on it and they get hurt, you will not sue us, okay? And the legal department didn't want to do this, but finally they did, because you have to worry about what if something happens, you know, who's going to have to go to court and who's going to pay. But anyway, so we ended up building these bucking Broncos, and we also had to fill an auditorium and tile it with the different people in the audience and all. But that was another pre-production thing where we had to design it and figure out how to build it, and then we had to test it and make sure that it worked. There was another thing we had to do this year where there was a special effects gag where somebody had to be pulled up the steps. Do you know when sometimes older people, they can't walk up the steps, so there's this little seat that they sit on and they go up the stairs? Do you know this? In the United States, they call it an acorn chair. So the person can get in at the bottom and they push a button or a remote control and they go up the stairs and then they can get out. So this house, the set had one of those in there. And the joke was that the bad date that came over was going to be handcuffed to the chair. And all of a sudden the chair would start going up and it would pull them up the stairs. It was silly, but it was okay. So we prepped it and we tried it and it worked fine. We were going to shoot it the next day. We came in the next day and somebody had come in overnight and had broken the acorn chair. So we went to go do it and it wouldn't work. And so we spent an hour when we were supposed to be shooting trying to fix it. We tried to find somebody to come in and fix it, and we couldn't. So finally what we did was, and the director was pretty upset and didn't know how to land on her feet to continue. And the star of the show was very frustrated and said, "I'm leaving at 9 o'clock tonight. I'm out of here." It's like, okay. But anyway, so what we ended up doing is we ended up overnight having the special effects people come in and stunt people come in, and they ended up doing it by hand where they had a whole chain motor that pulled the person up. So rather than depending on the original piece of equipment, we just did it by hand and made it happen. Now, my mistake, which I will never ever do again, is that I relied on a regular acorn chair to do it, which is not built to do that. And if I had been smart, I would have said, we just have to build this ourselves so I know that it will work, because I was relying on their mechanism to do it. And so it was really kind of stupid planning for me not to have said, oh, that could happen. But you just then cross your fingers and go, I think we're going to be okay, but we were not okay. And it cost us time, and time is money. But it turned out to be a good episode. Let's see what else we've got here. Then we have a tech scout. And those of you who are in production know that that's when you go out to your locations and you take your whole crew with you. You take your grips, you take your electric team. Everybody goes and you get in vans. Everybody gets in the minivans and you drive out and you walk. And the AD will run the scouts. So you'll walk over and go, okay, this is the bedroom we're going to be shooting in, okay? And to the director, which way do you want to shoot? And the director, he or she, will go, we want to shoot that way. And the AD says, are you ever going to see this way? And the director will go, no, 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 no. So that way the set decorators know that they don't have to spend the money or the time to decorate this side of the room, okay? And you talk about what you'll see in the background. Sometimes if you're outside, you see something that you don't want to see, and so then you have the greens people, who are the people with the trees and the plants, come in and they bring in extra trees to cover something so you can't see it. The other very important thing about the location scouts is, all the working trucks that come with you. When we go out, it's just so, I call it the circus comes to town, because there's a 10-ton grip truck, there's a 10-ton electric truck, there's a costume truck, there's a makeup trailer, there are all the actors' trailers. There's a catering truck. It's just ridiculous. But where do you park the trucks? You have to get permission to park them, and it has to be in a place where the camera won't see them, okay? So either you're too far away from the set or you're around the corner, but you have to think about all these things where they're gonna go, because on the morning that you get there to shoot, you can't go, okay, where do we park today? It has to be planned. And so there's also a transportation coordinator who takes care of all that and will ask all those questions. So there's just more stuff, okay? There's more stuff that needs to be thought about in pre-production ahead of time, and that's what the location scouts are. The other thing that's very good that the unit production manager that I work with does that I had never done before is that after the production meeting, it's a he does location logistics meetings, and it's so smart because he brings all the people together, whether it's location managers and the different departments, and goes, okay, do you know where you're going to park? And they'll go, no, and it'll be clarified where they're going to park. He goes, in this neighborhood, we are not allowed to get there before 6 a.m., so don't come and say I need to be there at 5:30 in the morning, because you're not going to be able to get there. So you need to talk about what are the rules of the neighborhood, what time can you get there, okay? All these things are pre-productions, all on the day of. If they came at 4 in the morning and couldn't get in, then I'm paying people for a couple of hours work that they can't do. So you need to talk all this stuff out, okay? Where are you going to cater the lunch that day? Because we're responsible for providing food for the whole crew. So there's a caterer that comes with a truck and cooks the food. Where is everybody going to sit? Because you have to provide the tables and the chairs and a tent to cover them so they're not in the sun. Where are you going to set up for catering? Many times you go in the neighborhood and you rent somebody's backyard, okay? Or you find a place in a building, an apartment building or an office building where you can go in, but you have to know where you're going to do that. It's all pre-production, okay? So that's the location scout. Then we have one other big meeting, and that's the production meeting. And by this time, people pretty much know what they need to do, but it's one last chance for the director to go through the script with everybody there to talk about what we're going to do. And we go around, and it takes an hour, maybe 2 hours, depending on how complex. But this is the time where everybody can ask their questions and say, I have a problem, what should I do? And we answer all that, okay? So then you're ready to shoot, okay? You've fit your actors in their costumes. You've done some makeup and hair tests to establish what the looks are. Sometimes actors need special products for their face that they're allergic to something, so you make sure they have what they need. Everything's been approved. You've come up with your budget number and all, so now it's time to shoot. And we do something which I'm sure you also know, which is the call sheet, which is a very, very detailed document that goes out to everybody, gets emailed to everybody with a map to the location where you're going to be with directions, where the emergency hospital is if anybody gets hurt. So everybody knows what time. It says like the prop master is there at 6 a.m., the costumer is there at 5:45 a.m. Everybody knows what time they need to be there. The ADs have called the actors and said your call is at 6 in the morning, be there. So now we're ready to shoot. And as you know, because you do production, they're long days, okay? My job, I always try to be there when we start in the morning, so I will be there at 7 a.m. on set when we start rehearsing to say hello to everybody and to make sure everybody's okay. This last year, the first time it ever happened to me, okay, it was the very first show of the season of a series I was doing, and we went at 7 a.m. and everything was fine. The actors were there, the director was there, and the director said, excuse me, I'm going to go use the bathroom, okay? And the director went off to the bathroom, and he never came out. And so, 15 minutes goes by, a half hour, and you go, oh my God, is he sick? What's going on? And who wants to go and knock on the door of the bathroom and say, are you okay? But somebody went and said, are you okay? And he goes, yeah, I'll give me a couple minutes and I'll be out. He never came out. So I had to go and find him. And it turned out that what happened was, I don't know why, but he was having an anxiety attack where his heart was pounding. And he just said, I can't do it. I can't do this. This has never happened to me, but I can't go in and do this. And I was like, okay. So here you are, you have all the crews there waiting, the actors are there waiting, the clock is ticking, we're spending money, we're there, what do you do? Well, what I ended up doing was asking the prepping director, because in series, you're shooting a show, but you're also getting ready for the one you're going to shoot the next week, and it's always with a different director. So I went to the prepping director who had come in to start the work and said, would you step in and do the directing of this week's episode? And he went, yeah, okay. But he didn't know the script, he didn't know anything, but he was a good director, and he went in and he took care of that day. And then I went with the director who was having the anxiety attack, and we took a long walk around the studio I thought maybe just calming him down and talking would be good. And at the end, he said, I can't do it, my heart's still pounding. So I said, go home. And he said, but I'll be fine, I'll be there tomorrow. Well, come tomorrow, 7 a.m. He called and goes, I can't do it. He said, I just can't do it. So once again, this other director came back in, but then we knew that this was not going to be able to do this episode, and so we lined up somebody else to come in. But I've never had a situation where you're ready to start and then the director can't do it, because that's the most important person. But, you know, my job is to solve problems, okay? Mine is not to bring problems to other people. Mine is to find the solutions to problems. And I have to say that that's my favorite part of my job, honestly. The budgeting, not my favorite part. I love talking to people, but I love coming up with problems. Once somebody said, you know, tomorrow morning at 6 in the morning, we need to have a stand-in for this child, okay? And stand-ins for children are little people, people of short stature, but who are grown-ups. And I knew I had to find somebody. It was like 8 o'clock at night to come in, and that's when I go, okay, I can do this. And so I make a bunch of calls and find somebody, and they come in. But I love the challenge of it. So this is where I think I'm well suited for my job, right? So we're shooting. I told you the story about the director. Here's another one for you, okay? So I was doing a show, and we were going to, it was a single camera show, and we were based in Los Angeles, but we were going to shoot in Las Vegas, all right? So the idea was that everybody, the cast and the crew, would go to the airport in Los Angeles the night before, and we would get on a plane. It's maybe like a 1-hour flight to Las Vegas. And we would go there and we'd sleep in the hotel, and the next morning we'd get up and we'd shoot for 2 days there, okay? So we all go to the airport, and they make an announcement that no planes are flying everywhere because they're big storms, big thunder and lightning storms, and all planes are grounded, and nothing's gonna leave that night. And it's like, oh my God. You know, we have people waiting for us in Las Vegas. We have a minimum of time to shoot this thing. What are we gonna do? So what we did was we rented a bus, okay? And I can't believe that the actors actually said, I will get on a bus. The bus pulled up a couple hours later. We had to find a bus, okay? And a driver who would drive to Las Vegas. And the bus pulled up, and everybody got on with their luggage. It was a 5-hour drive. It was probably 6 hours, because as we drove, you could see cars had driven off the road because of the storm. You know, it was like trees had come down, but we just went and we drove to Las Vegas, and we pushed the call, I think, an hour the next day, but we shot the show, okay? So once again, when you're presented with a problem, how do you land on your feet? What is the solution, okay? And then how do you get everybody on board too? Some people might go, I'm not getting on a bus, you know, so you have to talk about it and sell it forward and go, this is going to be great. I can't believe we're doing this. Can you believe we're getting on a bus? Let's get on a bus. You know, so you don't go, oh, this is terrible. You talk it up like it's a fun thing to do. And a lot of times people go, okay, it's fine. We'll do it. So that was one big problem that I had. Here's another one for you. So I did a show for a long time, and I don't know how well you know American television, but there was a show that was on called Roseanne, and maybe you've heard Roseanne, so sort of a well-known comedian. But she was always a challenging person. I liked her, but she was always kind of challenging and difficult to deal with. But we did an episode. I worked on this show for 8 years, by the way, and they decided at that point that we had the money that we would go different places. So I think we went to Las Vegas one time. Another time they said, let's have the show go to Disney World. Now, Disney World is in Florida, which is on the other side of the United States. So we got the money and we flew everybody to Florida. Well, some of the people on this show like to party, and they like to party hard, okay? And there was a bar near Disney World, and forgive me for saying this, but it was called Rachel's Big Titty Bar, okay, with the strippers. And so people would go out, mostly the guys, and they would party until 4 or 5 in the morning, and the call time would be at 6 o'clock the next day, okay? So they would show up, okay? But the main actor on that was a very heavy man and wonderful actor and a very great guy. And his father had actually died at that same age from a heart attack, okay? So he'd been out partying, and I came around and I saw him standing at a wall, like clutching his chest, like, oh, like he was like having a heart attack. I was like, oh my God, you know, on my show, the main actor is going to die. And this is going to be my show, and I'm going to be known because the actor died on my show. So I went up to him and I said, are you okay? And he goes, yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. But I didn't think he was fine. So I ended up calling a doctor, and I said, what do I do? And they said, well, you don't want a doctor there because a doctor can't do the paddles and the heart stuff. You need like an emergency medical, like an ambulance there. So I found an ambulance that came and parked there all day long, but I couldn't let this actor know that I was worried because he had said, I'm fine. So I had to get an ambulance and park it sort of around a building so he never knew it was there. But I knew that if something happened and he had a heart attack, I needed to have somebody ready to try to save him. So you solve the problems, okay? You know, that's the job. Or you try to solve them before they happen. Anything else interesting? Only 2 other good stories to tell you, and then we'll talk about questions. There was another show that I did that was shooting on the location in the desert outside of Los Angeles, where there's a lot of wild animals and it's very hot. But the idea was can't even remember where it was supposed to take place, but we would have people out there, and the production manager, who I had, who was very good, said, you know, in the desert there are a lot of rattlesnakes and biting snakes and bad things, and I really think when we shoot out there, we should have something called a hepatologist, which is a science person who does snakes, okay? That we should have somebody along, a snake expert, to come and to go around and make sure that there are no snakes there. So we had to hire somebody to do that. And then it was good because there were some snakes and he was able to catch them and put them away. We ended up then taking a snake and doing a shot where the snake's head was up and the camera was right here. So we shot a scene sort of by a snake's head, and we couldn't have done that if we hadn't had the snake scientist, the hepatologist with us, okay? One other thing. The other thing that happened that was bad, and probably ultimately I should have known better, was that we were shooting in a baseball field, okay? It was for children's baseball. I don't know in Ukraine whether you have the Little League or the sports where the children go and play baseball. And so we were in a baseball field, and it was at night. And we needed to have, a lot of the fields have the big overhead lights that come on, okay? But they would not give us the control of the lights. They said that the city and the baseball field were the ones that would do the lights. And how long will you be shooting? So we said, we'll be done by 11 p.m. We'll be done by 11 o'clock, okay? Well, it turns out come 11 o'clock, we're not done. And the lights go out, okay? Now, they're managed from some far away place, so it wasn't like we could go and open a box on the wall and push the button and the lights would come up. And it was the last day of shooting, and we had to finish this scene. So it was very bad, and I'm still very embarrassed by not saying we need to have the lights on all night, which would have been the smart thing to do. But the director of photography, because of the electronics and cameras these days, was able to go into the menus of the camera and make it lighter, or make it light with whatever lights that we could add. And I know somehow we made it work and it was fine, but it was one of those lessons again, and things are never going to go the way you think they're going to go. So always anticipate the problems, okay? Ask me questions.
Gonna be quite a few, if you don't mind.
Uh-oh.
And the others as well.
Uh-oh.
We
Okay.
have the pre-production meetings here are called chitka, which roughly translate to read-through. And on a theatrical, it usually takes painfully long. I mean, like 3-4 days of that.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I wondered, how long does it take on a show like you do, and is there a way to minimize that painful time?
I don't think you ever want to minimize that time, because I think it's so. The question was, how long should a production meeting be? They can be very long, or do you want them to be shorter? And I think that the production meeting is so important that you want everybody to speak up. And sometimes in the shows that I do, it's the AD, the assistant director, who runs the production meetings. And I will actually take them aside ahead of time and go, don't rush. Just don't rush through it. Take your time. I said, and if nobody says anything, ask. Costumes. Any questions? So I like them to be long, but 3 days is painful. That's terrible.
It is, trust me.
Another question: how many breakdowns do you have to go through? I mean, before a shooting street, or
A lot of them. So you're talking about like the one-liner with the scenes and the order. The one-liner.
Yeah, shooting plan.
The shooting plan, yeah. We go through many of them because we come up, the AD, the assistant director, will do the plan of like what days we're going to shoot what things and in what order. And a lot of times it has to do with, whether there's a costume change or a makeup change, or it's all in the same set. So even though it's a couple days worth of scenes, you still don't have to move the cameras. So we'll do, honestly, maybe 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm. Is there like a basic list of priorities, like starting from a star, then location?
A lot of times it's dictated by the locations. I never like to do a location on the first day. Say we have a 5-day schedule for my shows. That's how many days it takes to do the half-hour show. It's never good, as you know, to go out the first day on location. You want to start in your sets that first day. So the priority is usually to start with a scene that has maybe 2 people in it or 1 person in it, because you want to have more time for the other actors to get ready and to makeup and hair. And also there's simpler scenes to shoot, so you want to start with a simple thing and then get into more difficult things. Does that answer your question? Yeah, so usually simple, and then we try to end the week on something simpler too, so it sort of builds up to a bigger thing and then
How many minutes do you manage to squeeze into one shooting day? I mean, the final output.
We shoot probably about, it varies between like 4.5 minutes to maybe 7 minutes a day worth of the show. Okay.
And the last one,
yeah.
any software or online solutions that you prefer?
Yes, there are. There's a wonderful program out called Scriptation now. That you can put the script directly into this software program that comes up on your laptop, on your phone, or on your tablet. And you can basically, when there's a revised script, if you've made notes on your tablet and you get the revised script, it transfers your notes into it, which is very good. It also has something that many directors are using now, the tablets, because what they can do is they can go and take a photograph of what they want to see, the angle of the shot or the depth of field or whatever the software is that allows you to see through the kind of lens that you think you're going to use. And they can take a picture. It's almost like doing a visual shot list, and they can put it into the script. I mean, it's just amazing what this does. And other than that, we use Final Draft for scripts. We use Movie Magic budgeting. We use Movie Magic scheduling is just the kind of scheduling we use. The other software that's really great now is that we have a lot of digital paperwork for the payroll for the people we pay. So now when we hire people, we basically send them an email and they go to this website and they fill out all their start paperwork with their address and their social security number and the tax information, and then email it in. And that way it's a much more efficient way of doing it. I thought when we started using it that people would go, I won't do this, or, it's too hard for me to do it, but people love it, and nobody complains. They just come in, and if they can't do it on their phone, then they'll come into the office and we'll sit them at a computer, or we'll give them an iPad to do it on. So that's another good piece of software. There's a lot of really good stuff out there. And then the director of photography has many, with the sun, you know what I'm saying, with the way the sun angle is during the day, or the different lens filters that you can put on, that they can hold their phone up and say, this is what's going to happen. So there are a lot of great tools now. Somebody else.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good, good.
I have a question regarding the location. If you're shooting at the real location in the apartment, for example, I guess you have the contract between you and the owner of the apartment. And can you tell me, please, like the average rate for the two-bedroom modern apartment in Los Angeles for the whole 10-hour shift?
Okay, there's two questions you're asking. One of them is how much do apartments rent for in Los Angeles? It's expensive.
For the shooting.
But for the shooting,
yeah.
So it depends on if it's a very fancy neighborhood, it will be more. I would say for an apartment, it would probably be about $4,000 for the day. Okay, and then with the rent, and some houses, the big beautiful houses, could be $20,000 for the day. Okay, it could be very expensive. And then when you have the prep day, say you have to go and you have to repaint the walls a different color, or you have to take their furniture out and put your own furniture in. That's called a prep day. They charge you half the rate for the prep day, and then half the rate for the strike day, because when you finish shooting, they need another day to go in and to put the other furniture back and repaint the walls and fix any damage that you did. Okay.
Do you have like the fixed maybe insurance rate in the contract if
Yes.
you damage something?
Yeah, pretty much. That's always a wild card, as we say, because people take advantage of that too, the homeowners. I did a show where we went to somebody's home, and it was, the people had just moved in, and it was an older home, and they said you can't, only person who could use the bathroom is the actor, and then something happened with the plumbing, and they said it was our fault, and then they said we had to do all new plumbing in their house. And it was like, oh my God. And it's hard to prove, whose fault it was. So there's no like pre-negotiated rate about how much it will be. I think you try to be fair, with the homeowner, how much the damage is. Say you scratch their floor, you could go to them. I would take my construction person in and say, how much do you think it's going to cost to fix the floor? And the homeowner will get their person in and say, I think it's going to cost this much. And usually you work it out. So does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Добрий день. Ви розказували два цікавих моменти, що одного разу сценарист наполягав на зйомки на атракціонах і на... Я зараз, мабуть, повторю. Ви розказували, що сценарист наполягав на зйомки на атракціонах і згадували, що на цій концепт-мітінг здебільшого всі питання до сценариста.
I'm afraid we're going to have to repeat that for me. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Okay, it's coming.
Do you hear me?
Okay, now I get it. One second.
І ви
I can,
згадували
yes.
про сценариста.
Okay. Once again.
Що одного разу він наполягав на атракціонах, і тому ви мали це організувати, і що на High Concept Meeting здебільшого питання до нього. У зв'язку з чим цікаво, наскільки сценарист може впливати у вас на процес, і якщо їх порівнювати з режисером, то у кого більше впливу і чому?
That's a very good question, okay? In television, the writer is the most important person, and the writer is the showrunner. In movies, it's the director, is the auteur, and the best person, but it's always about the writer. So if you have a question, you always go to the writer for the answer, and that's the showrunner. With the roller coaster, part of the reason the writer wanted was there was a little bit more in the script that I did not tell you, that the person who was going to be, and this probably should have said, the person who was supposed to ride the roller coaster was pregnant. And part of the rules and the laws in California with amusement parks is that nobody who's pregnant is allowed to get on a dangerous ride. So, but we couldn't at that point lie to them because they'd seen the script. And so what we ended up doing actually is the roller coaster stopped, but the person who was supposed to be pregnant wasn't on it, and we had them sort of run up afterwards. So we found a good device to fix that story thing, but the real issue was that the roller coaster had to stop partway up, but they didn't want us to show, even to represent that we'd put, even though the actor was not pregnant, they did not want to tell a story where they allowed a pregnant person to get on a roller coaster.
Well, thank you very much again about your... I'm here.
Hi, sorry.
About all you told us, but actually I understand the question. The situation is very different to our situation because a writer is not involved in production at all. It's usually for our territory that writer writes the script. It is sold to the studio, for example, changed by the editor, by a creative producer, and then the writer can hardly recognize his project on the screen after all. So that can happen. So would you please tell us the difference between writer and showrunner? What is the showrunner is responsible for? Because as I understand, he works with the budgets as well. He's responsible as a producer,
Well,
responsible for production.
Yeah, and by the way, they're men and women showrunners. It's sort of once, as I told you earlier, it sort of doesn't matter anymore. There's two kinds of show. In television, the showrunner is usually the writer, okay? However, there are shows like the one I'm doing right now where there is a non-writing person as well, but who will help run the show. But it's just in television, it's the writer. It's the writer's world. And I know it's different other places, and in films it's different. It's just a different way of doing things. Sorry, I don't have a better answer. What else, guys? Somebody else? Question? Stories? Anything? When you do production here, is it similar to what I have told you? No? No? Why?
At all.
I know that what I do, there's so much money. There's just like the studios have money, so we spend a lot of money. And I think that sometimes the better, smarter, more creative films come when you don't have money, because you have to think about ways to do things that are better. So I'm not saying that my way is the right way, okay? I'm just saying that's the way the business is. Yes?
Probably is that we don't really have the units, the guilds, and we are don't have so many obligations as you do. So we in these terms we have more freedom probably, and we are more relaxed in the production. But what you said, it's all very useful to how to plan when it will be all as it should be. So that's probably the difference. And of course difference in the budgets and different approach to the actors and to other talents, because you work more with the agents. Most of our people don't have agents, well, just a few actors probably, and that's it. So maybe my colleagues from production could add a different point.
I would add that besides not having any guilds, we also have virtually no insurance on the set, on anything, basically. So if anything happens...
what happens when somebody gets hurt?
Your fault.
Yeah, it's your fault.
They're hurt.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
There was a production last year, I think. There was a guy, one of the grip guys or electrical guys, killed a person on a set, with a knife, and it wasn't all over the news and stuff. And the producer of the show, I think, still in the court or something, because he's been sued for that.
Right.
And that stuff, even that kind of stuff happens. But one of the major issues that I'm having with the production that happen here is that the creators are having too much creativity on set. They don't do their pre-production work well,
Yeah.
so they start to think about how they're going to shoot it on the shooting day,
That's
which is
bad.
totally
That's bad.
inappropriate.
Yeah. No, that's hard because, and it's their pre-production, but it's also then them understanding that there's a point to which you can't make big changes because you're going to mess up everything else. Your day is going to go too long, your week is going to go too long, you're not going to be able to finish the project because this person got creative, And some creativity is good. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just there has to be some sort of procedure in place. And also how you give notes. You could be doing a project and the writer wants to change a line or to end something a different way, which is fine, and that's what they should be doing. And a lot of times if they're on set, they can make it better. But they can't just run in and go, oh, we're going to do this. There's a procedure to that, too. You have to tell the director what you're going to do. And then the AD needs to let all the different people know. Like if the actor is going to be in a different place, the boom operator needs to know that they need to be over there. So it's a matter of setting up some sort of procedures but that are not too restrictive creatively, but that there's a way that everybody can communicate with each other. So, and it's hard when it's a new production. You know, if you're on a series and you do this every week, you know the people and you have a system. If it's a film or an independent film and it's the first time you've got together, you have to discover and find all those ways to do it. So it's challenging, but hopefully they're good people and they're talented at what they do and skilled and collaborative too, and nice people who don't yell and get frustrated. But the insurance thing, that's bad. That's hard. You know, in my business, everything is insured, and the lawyers are all over everything, that you can't do things because the company might be sued, you know. So, yeah. But once again, I think that, you know, when you don't have all the resources that Hollywood has, I think that the work can be way more creative. And, you know, I think that the good work that's being done in television is not the network television. I think it's the shows on Netflix. I think it's the HBO shows that they don't have to be responsible to advertisers to say only nice things about things, you know, that they can have big wild ideas or big, you know, violent ideas or whatever to tell their story. I just think there's a show on, Mike, was it Amazon or Netflix, Transparent? Do you remember? It's Amazon. Amazon, yeah, which is another sort of platform for us anywhere in the United States to tell different stories, that you can tell stories that are not 21 minutes long. They can be 45 minutes long. They can be 15 minutes long. You know, and you can talk about topics like, you know, the gender issues, and Transparent has to do with the father being becoming a transgendered woman. And, you know, a lot of people don't want their children to see this or do that, but on these platforms, you can choose to watch this or not, and they're beautiful stories, and they're well done, and I just think it's pretty great, the things that we see now. There's also that show, maybe you've seen it, it's a British show called Fleabag, where a woman, it's a very good show, but she talks about themes. You know, she sleeps with a priest, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, who would even think about, you know, doing that? But these are what these stories are about. But it's really well done and really smart and really funny. So, once again, sometimes without the rules and stuff, you get better products. So,
thank you for your talk. And you started off back in, I don't want to say the year because I'm gonna mistake, but you have big experience in the business, and probably you just said about the things that have changed. So now we have the platforms for content, and I assume the business works differently. So what are the key differences you see now, and what are the things you had to adapt from the way you used to do things, but have changed, and what is the most visible change?
Sure. I think the most physical change is the digital world that we're living in. Honestly, you know, I have been doing this a long time, and I will not say how long because I don't want to be too old to you guys. But when I did start, we didn't have word processors. Okay, my husband will agree to this. But when the writers wrote a script, they would write it either on a typewriter or on the big pads of yellow paper, and then they would give you the pad of paper. And you would have a production assistant take it to a typing service, and overnight the typing service would write it up in a script form, and in the morning the production assistant would bring back a box full of scripts and take them to the set and hand them out, okay? And when I was a coordinator then, and part of my job was to read the scripts, and if there were any typographical errors in there, like they forgot a letter or spelled something wrong, I had to call the typing company and say, you know, there were 2 typos in the script, and if you can't fix this, I'm going to go to Joanne's typing service instead of Barbara's typing service. So that's how dinosaur it was, okay? And then on a show, a writer's assistant said to me, she said, you know, I just got something that's called a word processor, and it's got this program in it called WordStar, which is a very old version of writing software. And I won't charge you, but I would really like to try to bring it in and see if I can use it. I went, sure, bring it in. And that was the very first word processor that I ever used on a show, and it turned out to be great. So the difference is that, but now, you know, everybody on the show has a computer that the studio either provides for them or pays them a box rental for. But it means that, you know, even the production assistants have a computer because they order the lunches online, you know, and they do the research online. You know, you do everything with your computer, and it's good. It's very good, and I think things are better and more efficient in the kind of research you can do on the spot, and the kind of, we were talking about the tear sheets for the wardrobe. You go on and you find ideas, you know, that you can just download or print. I mean, it's brilliant, the kind of stuff, that the information that we have access to and the tools that we have to do our job are so much better than they were. And then the software that we talked about with the scriptation, you know, and the scheduling and the budgeting programs. And Final Draft is just the greatest scripting program. Other people have them, I'm sure, that are good, other programs, but Final Draft is the sort of premier, most generally used software. So I'm not sure I've exactly answered your question, but I will tell you that I think it's all wonderful, all this change. I know that there's some downsides to it, but I think it's great. And I think the best way to keep working is to embrace all these changes and to use them. If you're the ones who go, I don't want to learn how to do that, I'm not going to do it, nobody's going to hire you, okay? They're going to go, we're going to find somebody who has a great attitude and wants to try all these things that we're going to do, all right? I will tell you, though, that I did say no to learning one thing this year. It's part of, I told you that part of the payroll service now, people can fill out their paperwork on their phone. And they also have, do you use purchase orders here too? When you do business, when you go to buy something, you fill out a purchase order, which goes to the accountant that says that you've decided that you're going to spend $900 on something. So even though you haven't gotten the bill, they know it, and it's in the budget and in the accounting. It's called a purchase order. And now they're digital purchase orders as well. So instead of having a sheet of paper with like number 1, number 2, number 3 at the top, it's one that you just go to, pull a number down, and you fill it out and you send it back, and then it gets sent around electronically for the different approvals. Like I would have to approve it, the studio executive would approve it, the department head. And the unit production manager had finished, they were gone, but there were still some purchase orders that had to be approved. And I was just so tired, I said, I can't do it. I said, I can't learn one other software now. And I felt badly afterwards that I was being that old dinosaur person who wasn't going to adapt to a new system. And I should have said no problem, and I should have figured out how to do it. But it was just one more thing. It was one more password I would have had to figure out, and I didn't want to do it. So I think the change is really wonderful. I think we're spending a lot more money in Hollywood than we did. People make a lot of money. But that's that business, okay? It's not the business in other countries, it's the business that's done this way. We good? Anybody else? Are we done? Have I answered your questions? Have I told you any good stories? Have you learned anything from me? Okay.